Pleasure to introduce Robert Holden. Robert is a gifted spiritual teacher. He's a coach, he's a writer, management consultant and broadcaster. He's the director of the Happiness Project, which I'm sure many of you would have heard of, and Success Intelligence. And his innovative work has been featured on Oprah, Good Morning America, and in 2 major BBC TV documentaries. He's the author of several best-selling books, including Happiness Now. Just met Robert this morning. He strikes me as a very humble person, very intuitive and reflective, so I hope you enjoy the next session with Robert.
Definitely feeling reflective mood, and this is a big subject we're looking at, success, and perhaps even a bigger subject, the heart. So when you put the two together, this is a big subject. Obviously also we're a men's group. Tomorrow's Father's Day, so there's a lot going on. And I was asked to speak personally, and perhaps the most personal introductions I can give to you is to read something from the beginning of my book, Success Intelligence. I've never actually read it out before, but here goes. This is just from the first page of this book. Life is full of moments, one moment after another. Some moments pass you by without you barely noticing. Other moments stay with you forever. They change the way you think, you see, you live. I had a life-changing moment when I was 16 years old. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was half walking and half running down a very busy street in Winchester, the city I grew up in. I was late, and I was on my way to meet friends outside the record shop at 4 o'clock. As I hurried along, I noticed a man lying face down on the pavement. He could have been dead or dying. Everyone saw him. He was in plain view. We all pretended not to see him. I was going to pass him by. I was late, and I was only 16, but something made me stop. I moved cautiously towards him. He was wearing an old, disheveled coat. His glasses lay next to his head, tortoise-shell frames. The lens was smashed. His hair was long and wild. He stank of alcohol. I guessed he was homeless. I pulled at his arm and turned him over, and his face was a mass of cuts and bruises. He was barely conscious. He smiled at me. "Hello, Dad," I said. It was my dad. I grew up in this little village in Winchester called Littleton. Very little. And it was a pretty normal upbringing, I think. Except that my mum did have experiences of depression. Recurrent depression, it's sometimes called. She would just one morning, any old morning, she wouldn't get out of bed, and she would stay that way for sometimes weeks and months on end. That was something we had to get used to, me and my brother, right from the beginning, because it was a recurrent depression. So that was a story that was always in our family story. Dad, though, that was different. We didn't have any idea he was drinking. Not until about when I was 15. Around about 15 years old, we became aware that he'd been drinking. And we were all of us surprised, because he was a success, because he had this great family, because he had his ups and downs in his work, but fundamentally he'd done okay. If pressed, he could probably have found his 50 gratitudes a day. He'd have had to have been pressed for it, but they'd have been there. I mean, he was doing pretty well. Anyway, we found out he was drinking. We asked him to stop, and he did. But then he started again, and so we asked him to stop, and again he did, because he loved us and he wanted to try to do that, but he couldn't really do it. And so for the last 10 years of his life, which for me was 15, I was 15 and he died when I was 25, he lived often homeless. Not always, but often. And I had no idea on that afternoon that was my dad lying there. But you can imagine it was a bit of a shock to turn someone over and find, yeah, there he is, that's my dad. When Dad started to live homeless, what happened would be we'd often get a phone call on a Thursday night, me and my brother. My brother's 4 years younger than me. We'd wait for the phone call on a Thursday night. It would happen most Thursdays, and it'd be Dad ringing from a phone box somewhere, and he'd say, let's meet up, sons. Let's meet up this weekend. And we'd meet up somewhere in Winchester. And most of the times we did meet up. Sometimes something would have happened between Thursday and Friday, and we wouldn't know what that was, but he wouldn't be there. But most of the time it happened, and in that journey, we got to experience our dad. We also got to experience a few of his new friends as well, other people who were homeless. Listening to them speak was an absolute revelation to me. I think I just had imagined that when people are homeless, they've probably always had a tough time and maybe never got going with their life. To be honest, I don't know what I thought. I hadn't thought it through. But I sort of thought, well, maybe they've just always had a hard time. But it wasn't like that for a lot of them, including my dad. For a lot of them, they'd sort of done okay. Some of them had done really well. In fact, so well, I'd actually have to check to see if they'd made that story up or not, because they had achieved quite high positions in certain corporations, certain workplaces. What was really clear to me, though, was that they were all of them now suffering from a disillusionment. They were disillusioned with the world. They were disillusioned with life. The success, for those of you who had had it, for those of them that had had it, the success hadn't delivered what had been promised. The satisfaction, the happiness, it wasn't really there. But because that experience was happening to me and my brother, my mum with her recurrent depression and my dad with the alcoholism, it got me thinking from a very early age about the big questions. Those really big questions like, well, what is life for, and what's the point, and who am I, and what is success, and what is happiness, and what is love. I remember when I was around about 15, maybe 15 or 16, I went into school one day. It was just another normal day, except that we were told in the morning that we were going to have a careers advice counselling session. Do you ever have one of those? Do you know what I mean? A sort of like a 1 hour type session where you were going to get given some advice on your career. And we didn't know this was going to happen. It happened in the afternoon. Ironically, it was taken by somebody who none of us had ever met before. So this was somebody who didn't even know us, who was going to tell us what we might want to do with our lives. Anyway, we all trotted in and sat down, and the teacher looked around the class and she picked me out. My lucky day, obviously. And she said, so what are you going to do with your life? What career would you like? And I remember just being completely stunned and shocked by that question. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And particularly because of what was happening with my dad, there was absolutely no interest in any sort of a career. I was dealing what felt like emotionally like in a war zone, and I was just trying to work things out, trying to work out what had happened to my mum and dad as much as anything. So I said to her, look, thank you for asking, and I'm really not sure just yet. And rather gracefully, I thought, I tried to hand the conversation on, but she stuck with me, and she said, what do you love? And I said I love to play the guitar. I was in a band, rock band, we were called Nervous, and I played rhythm guitar. So I thought that might be good, And the other thing that I loved to do is play cricket. Cricket was just God's game, as far as I was concerned. I was a medium fast bowler. I bowled in swing off the wrong foot, a bit like a guy called Max Walker or Lance Gibbs from West Indies. Those are my heroes, and I just could bowl these big in-swingers. And so I said, well, maybe, a rock star or a cricketer. And she said, you can't. I said, oh, all right. Anyway, she left me alone, and then she talked to everybody else. What do you want to do, she said. What do you want to do? Anybody here want to be a teacher? We all laughed. I mean, the thought of being a teacher, we're just waiting to leave school. We thought of coming back to school to be a teacher was really funny. So we couldn't wait to go. But what was also really shocking on that careers advice class was a lot of my friends had already made up their mind what they were going to do. And we'd never talked about it. But they'd made up their minds. And some of them were going to go into things like carpentry, some into banking, various things. Right at the end, she comes back to me and she says, right, Holden, what are you going to do? And I've had 50 minutes after all, to work out the rest of my life. Should have found something by now. And I said, I'm really not sure. She pressed me, and out of my mouth I just said, I'll be a philosopher. And she said, you can't. And I was always a good boy at school. I wasn't academic, but I was a good boy. But I was really annoyed. And I said, well, I'm going to be a philosopher. And she said, what sort of philosopher are you going to be at? Getting annoyed at me. And this was the only time I played to the crowd, which was my friends. I shouted back at her, I said, Greek. I'll be a Greek philosopher. I had no idea what that meant, obviously, but I'm a Greek. So she left it at that, and for a couple of weeks, actually, my friends did call me a philosopher, which I quite liked. I thought it was quite nice. But it did sow a seed, and at the end of school, I scraped through. I was a C-grade student at school. Wasn't academic. I say it in Success Intelligence. It's not that my education was bad. I just think it was, for the most part, it felt irrelevant. I didn't really know what it was for. 1066, spinning jenny, algebra. I wasn't there yet. I didn't know what it was for. And remember, my dad's living homeless, and my mum's depressed. So I'm thinking about, life. So anyway, I managed to scrape in, not to university. I wasn't smart enough for university, but in those days there was such a thing called polytechnics, and I could get into a polytechnic and I got into one where I managed to study psychology, sociology, philosophy. It was a modular program. It was one of the very first modular programs where you didn't just study one thing, you could study a whole host of things. From that experience, I then went on to study psychotherapy and counselling, where I met Easton Hamilton, which you referred to today, Jeff. So small world, we're all connected somehow. And in that study, I was able to get to grips with some of those big questions. And I thought maybe I could just share one or two bits and pieces, particularly from the Success Intelligence Project, and how that's evolved over the years. So when I was putting this together, I thought I'd start with what I call an identity principle, a principle to do with us and our relationship with ourselves. And I always like to start here because it strikes me that our relationship with ourselves, or at least who we think we are, absolutely influences our relationship with everything else anyway. So we may as well start here. And this is the principle I thought I would start with, just looking at this idea that success is being even more of who you really are. This seems, a good place to start. Success Intelligence began really just, by the way, as a talk. I started giving that talk in the mid-90s. And I called it Success Intelligence because I'd heard about emotional intelligence. I'd heard it was 1992, 93, emotional intelligence was rising. And I called it Success Intelligence because I realized that when I looked at my life, at this time I'm around about 26, 27, so my dad's passed away by about a year. I'm thinking, I'm thinking to myself, I know I want to be successful, but I'm not feeling it. I've been working hard at success, but I don't think I've worked out what it is. The hope is I'm going to bump into it and feel it one day. But frankly, I don't really know where I'm running. I know I'm running, I know I'm working hard, I know I'm busy, I know I'm giving it everything. But honestly, if pushed, if you were to say what's the real direction you're heading in, I wouldn't have known. So I was almost doing a spread bet and just hoping I'd bump into it somehow. So I thought, well, I'm going to call this Success Intelligence because it strikes me that the thing to do here is just to be able to stop, just like we're doing today. Being able to stop and think it through a bit. Instead of putting masses of effort into success, actually thinking about it more. Getting clearer on the inside so that we can see what success really is. And that was the starting point. And I started coaching people, and then bit by bit things happened, and I ended up running leadership programs, and I ran those programs and continue to for all sorts of different companies. One of the companies I work for is a brand called Dove. If you're familiar with Dove. Dove's a soap company. A soap company that wanted to be more than just a soap company. A soap company where the leader of the company said, you know what, I'm tired of selling soap. She basically, if I was to articulate it in my language, she said to me, I don't want a job, I want a purpose. And so she created something called the Real Beauty Campaign. And part of that Real Beauty Campaign was to create this little film I'm going to show you. And maybe we can use this film just as a basis for me to say a couple more pieces. But here we are. It's a short film called Evolution. Just a little bit of volume. How many of you have seen that before? Can I just get a sense? So good. A lot of you, it's quite new. Okay. I toyed about whether to show you this one or not, bearing in mind we're a men's group, but it doesn't matter how many times I look at that. I'm shocked by what goes on and what happens there. For women, one of the great conversations of their life is beauty and being beautiful enough. We have the equivalent conversations, I'm sure, as men. Ultimately, I think it's the same conversation. It's am I okay? Am I lovable? Deep down, I think that's what it is. Am I enough? I was coach to the president of Dove for 5 years, to two presidents of Dove, and it was a great case study in just watching how, for organizations as well as individuals, at some point when it comes to success, we are called upon, I think, to be even more of who we really are, rather than the face we're trying to show the world. There is a huge pressure to show the world a face. And T.S. Eliot said in one of his poems, to prepare a face to meet all of the other faces in the world. If we can resist that temptation to make a face to show the world, if we can take the conversation of success away from the ego, away from the self-image, and bring the conversation about success to the soul, to the unconditioned self, then I think we can find the heart of success, rather than the look of success, if you like. But, it's difficult. It's a very tricky thing to do. This is a picture of my daughter when she was about 3.5. She's called Bo. She's all grown up now. She's 6.5. So, one day I was working at home. I have an office at the top of the house, and she came running up the stairs. There's 2 flights of stairs. So, Easton, I could hear her doing the footsteps, and she's on her way. She's doing the breathing as well, pretty heavy breathing. And I know that means I've got to get everything ready, because children just want your whole attention. You can't give them a bit of it. So I'm putting things away. I'm hitting save on the computer and that sort of stuff, because I know she's on her way. She runs into the room. This is one of our favourite family stories. She runs into the room and she goes, Daddy, I just don't understand myself. I said, sweetheart, why not? And she said, why do I love shoes so much? And I said, sweetheart, I have no idea. Why do you love shoes so much? I love them as much as my heart, she said. And it's true, as the last 3 years have borne out, she absolutely loves shoes. Here's a picture of her shoes. See? Just filling it in for you. These were the shoes she'd just got. And for her, this was it. And already at the age of 3.5, she loves shoes. And she's trying to work it out. Why do I love shoes that much? The conditioning, I guess. The conditioning starts early. And it starts early for all of us. And somewhere along the line, when we start to meditate on the question, what is success, we have to take into account that there has been some conditioning. For all of us, men and women. The conditioning is going to be there. Part of that conditioning, by the way, will also be that our father had a definition of success. And maybe our mother had a definition of success too. And then our culture has had definitions of success. And along the way, we have to decide how helpful have those definitions been, and how much have they informed our own definition of success. And that's important, I guess, for us to be able to work out. With my dad, I had nothing to fight against, because my dad was out for the count. He never really explicitly gave me his definition of success. Except that I will say this, and this might sound strange. For all of the trouble he was in, I always felt loved by him. And I'm amazed that that happened somehow. But it did. So, that conditioning is in there, and I guess at some point we come into this question, the who am I question. And I just wanted to share a little story of my own when I was about 25. And by this time I had discovered philosophy, and particularly Eastern philosophy. I was reading the Gita, the Upanishads, the Dhammapada, the Eastern Bibles, if you like. And I was loving it. It made much more sense to me than anything I'd read up to then. And one day I went to listen to a talk. The talk was by an Indian guru, and the talk was called You Can Have Whatever You Want. So I liked the title. I thought, right, that's a nice title. I'll go. There were about 200 people in the room. And he came out onto the stage. He had some disciples around him. I didn't know who he was. But he started his talk, which was translated, and essentially the talk began, "It is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Everything that you truly want, you have already been given." All you have to do is find it in yourself. And then, that was it. That was the end of the talk. So by any standards, quite a short talk. And then what happened after that was a darshan, a silent blessing. This was my first introduction to those, where we were, one by one, all 200 of us, to go to the front of the room, sit in front of the teacher, and receive a blessing. So I'd never done one of these before, so I was strategic about the whole thing, and I went around about at 100. So I waited for 100 people to go first, just to get it down, to see what was happening. You go, you stand, sit in front of them, you receive this blessing, and you go. And I'm up for that. I thought that was good. So after 100 people, I nip on and go up to him, I kneel in front of him, I look in his eyes, and he says, "Who are you?" First time he's talked to anybody. "Who are you?" And I was a little surprised. I said, "I'm Robert." And he laughed. He laughed. He did a chuckle. And I felt really a little embarrassed, I have to be honest. Probably had one of those out-of-body experiences, you know, where you're sort of starting to watch yourself from hoping there's a white light you can move into. And he laughed, he settled down, and then he looked at me again. Really big eyes. "Who are you?" And I'm not sure what I said next, but I either said I'm a psychologist or an author. And he really laughed. I mean, laughed more than the first time. And one or two of his disciples started to chuckle too, which, to be honest, really annoyed me. And I still didn't quite know what to do, and then he looked me in the eyes again. This is the third time. He said, "So who are you?" And at this point I'm panicking, and I'm thinking I'm going to tell him what I think he needs to hear. So I said to him, "I am a soul." He cracked up. He cracks up with us. This time he's holding his sides. He's doing a really big belly laughter. The really annoying disciples are laughing too. Everyone's cracking up because I've just gone and told him I'm a soul. And he looks me in the eyes again, and he goes into silence, and I nip off and go and sit down and try to pick up the pieces of my life, you know, such what they were. But I tell the story just because, you know, at that point I suppose I started to realise, okay, I'm not just a body. It's the body's just the dress code that you wear when you come to the dinner party that is the human experience. I know I'm more than that. I know that. So I'm a soul. But what he pointed out to me was I still had no idea what that was. And I think he, along with other people, encouraged me over and over again to sit with this question. Who am I? Who am I when I'm not trying to be somebody? Who am I when I'm not trying to be a success? Who am I when I'm not working so hard? Who am I when I'm not judging myself? Who am I? And just to feel that, to see if I can recognize that unconditioned self, rather than the self-image that I was trying to promote to show the world that I'm sort of okay. So this is my son Christopher. Christopher's, well, at this point he was 9 months old. Christopher is now 2.5, and he's a smiler, and he's always smiled, and he smiles at everything. As soon as he could smile, he would smile at everything, and amongst other things, any inanimate object, he would just smile at it. A chair, he looks at it and smiles. It was a phenomenon. One day, he and I were at home on our own. Ollie, my wife, and Bo, they were off out somewhere, so we were having man time. And we were just, I was carrying him around, and he was smiling at something. And there was a mirror, just a big mirror in our living room, and I just put it in front of the mirror, and I just said, "There you are, Christopher." And I expected him to smile, and he didn't. He just deadpan on me, absolute deadpan. I'm Christopher, I give him a jiggle. "There you are, that's you." Just nothing. I was really surprised. It was one of the only times he hasn't smiled. You know, now I was asking him to do it, and he wasn't doing it. I had a chat with a friend who works in child development, and he wasn't surprised at all. He said, oh, it's very common for children up to the age of 18 months old not to recognize themselves in the mirror. And he said it's something to do with the fact that at that age we still don't realize that that body might be something to do with us, which I thought was very interesting. From a spiritual perspective, that is very interesting. And I think success on some level is recognizing that we have a body, but there's more to us than that as well. If we don't entertain that possibility, then all of our definitions of success will be wrapped up in the body, and there probably won't be much of a heart or a soul to the success that we are ultimately looking at. The great drama of authenticity, I think, is to recognize that we have a learned self, we have a self-image, but actually before the self-image even began, there was an unconditioned self. That self can be described in many, many different ways, in many, many different spiritual traditions. But I think that on some level what success is, it's recognizing ourselves before we got conditioned. It's being able to recognize who we really are. Before, for instance, we started to think like a consumer, for instance. You know, like the question, what do you want? You think about that question for a moment. If you've ever looked at it, what do you want? The chances are, if you've been brought up in a society that relates to you as a consumer, then you will think the inquiry, what do you want, means what do you want to have? What do you want to get? But that's not what the inquiry is. What do you want could mean, what do you want to be? What do you want to know? What do you want to learn? What do you want to give? But if we relate to ourselves only as consumers, as people who have to buy stuff up, then of course what do you want becomes the invitation for a shopping list. So it's important, I guess, that we're able to work with this. One of the people that's inspired me along the way is a philosopher called Erich Fromm. And Erich Fromm refers to the learned self as a commercial personality, which I think is quite a haunting phrase, the commercial personality. Or he also referred to it as the marketing personality. He said that what we do as young men and as young women is we sell ourselves. We make ourselves look good in order to sell ourselves. And he said what we have to be careful to do is not to sell out. We have to make sure that we don't sell out. But we will dress ourselves up so that we try our very best to, somewhere along the line, fit in with the world and try and be a success in the world. But at some point, what we also have to do is recognize that we're not just here to fit in with the world. We're here to help the world. There's another agenda in there somewhere. The poet Rumi, he wanted to share this with me. I remember exactly where I was when I read this the first time. Rumi, he said, "They say I tell the truth. Then they ask me to do a puppet show of myself in the bazaar." And these are the big lines. He says, "I'm not something to sell. I have already been bought. I am not something to sell. I have already been bought." And I think what he meant by that is that he listens to the unconditioned self. He listens to his heart. He listens to his soul. And he takes direction and guidance from that when it comes to thinking about what it is he most wants to do with his life and what he most wants to do with his day. So then on that note, I would say that for me, success is having a daily spiritual practice. Having a daily practice where you can take some time just to be able to be with yourself, to connect with that unconditioned self, and to take some guidance from it, and to be able to listen to yourself and to say, yeah, what do I want to do? Not just what should I do, but what do I want to do? I was coaching somebody for the first time just last week who has done exceptionally well in life. But there's one thing that had unnerved him, which is that he's 48 years old. He said that every single job he had taken in his life had been a job that basically had been given to him. And because it had been given to him, he thought he should take it. And he was now just at a place where he was saying, do you know what, I just want to take a moment and just to think, what sort of a job would I like? What would be the job I'd like to do? One that I could make up rather than just be given one. Does that make sense? And we spent some time together just exploring that together. And for me, that's an incredibly significant moment. He was very good at what he does. Very good at it. But there was just that little voice saying, what if? What if there's another way? What if there's something else here for me to do? So that's the first reflection. Here's the second reflection. I call this a vision principle, which is this idea. In a world of front-page news, fast-track careers, designer clothing, and tragic sports results, you have to remember what is real. And I think in some ways, what is success as a question is really a new twist on an old question. And the old question is, what is real? Success is knowing what is real and what is true. So, I like this one. I think we live in a manic society. I think we are racing and chasing. The pursuit of happiness has speeded up, that's for sure. And yet, according to the research, we're not any happier. We are chasing success. We do everything faster than ever before, basically. And I'm sure there's some reasons for that. And just for fun, I wanted to share with you a little philosophy of mine. I call it go marketing. I wonder if the reason why we're all so manic is because of go marketing. It's just something I'm tracking at the moment. Go marketing, it all began with wash and go. I don't know if you remember that product coming out about 20 years or so ago. Wash and go. First time ever that you had a shampoo and a conditioner in one bottle, and it was going to save you a good 2 minutes on your day. And we all seemed to fall for that. We all thought, I need that because I'm busy and it's manic and I'm chasing after something and I don't want to waste 2 minutes a day, doing the shampoo and the conditioning thing. So we did it. And we did our wash and go, and it went very, very well. And then the marketeers got onto it, and they started to basically sell us all sorts of products like this, white and go. So we've got, wash and go, now white and go. And then after that, get up and go. And the products came really, really fast. And we just bought them all up. But, and this was the big thing, we're being told to go. But where to? I mean, seriously, where to? As you start looking, you just notice, and you'll notice from now on, go coffee. Sounds great, but where to? Where are we meant to go to? And why do you need to go in there anyway? Couldn't it just be coffee? Go burger. We already knew what a burger was, but what's a go burger? And honestly, you just look everywhere, and you'll just notice, everywhere you go, there are just these marketing invitations where we just have to go, insure and go. Click and go. This one, at Floors to Go, I was at a football match and I saw this. Floors to Go. It sounds sensible until you think about it. Where are you going to take a floor? I mean, seriously, where to? Very strange. And this was why I think this is really weird. Waitrose, garnish and go. Okay? Garnish and go. I mean, again, I have to just say, where to? You've garnished your salad, now you've got to go. Imagine over to the dinner table. I imagine that's where you've got to go to. So there's this huge pressure. Apparently we've just all got to speed up and we've got to go really, really fast. So I created a prayer. Here's my prayer. Somewhere along the line you have to be able to say a prayer a little bit like this. Dear God, help me to slow down and not rush past everything that is important to me today. Amen. Or something like that. What I did with Success Intelligence was just to be able to encourage us to be able to stop, and literally stop, and just to say, hold on a minute, what's this all about? When I started to look at my own definition of success, I realized actually that my definition of success had nothing to do with my life now. I was suffering from what I affectionately call destination addiction. My definition of success was all wrapped up in the future. And that was why I still felt so empty. Because even though I was racking up the successes, I wasn't interested in what I was really doing now. I was interested in where I was trying to get to. And at some point, what I realized was I had to stop. I had to look at this chase. I had to look at this manic behavior. And I had to just try and find a way to be able to say, what if success isn't the destination? What if somehow success is the journey? Do you see what I mean? Not just the destination. So I had to start to look at, well, what is success? To your point, Phil, just looking at that word. And actually recognizing that on a very simple level, the word success is simply a judgment. That's all it is. It's simply an indication that you're measuring your life by something. The important thing, therefore, has to be, what's the measure? What's the measure? What sort of a tape measure, what sort of a ruler are you using as your measure for success? And that seemed to be really the absolute key. So, somewhere along the line, I think the goal, as well as to meditate on success, is to be able to get into conversations about success. And to be able to have those conversations where we can talk with each other. I did get a chance to talk a little bit with my dad about these things. We would sit on the Buttercross at Winchester, and we would talk about life. And he would talk about what he wanted for me, which was more than he could want for himself. But at some point, I think, if we can get into these conversations with our family, with our friends, with our children, it's a huge thing to do. And I do believe that we evolve through the conversations that we are most willing to have. And one of those conversations is this one. So, firstly, I think success is having a daily spiritual practice where you can listen to your heart. And then it's to have a definition, to have conversations about success, where we can get nice and clear. So then after that, I wanted to share with you a relationship principle. And here's the principle. It might sound a bit strange, but the principle is this, okay? If you're alive, you need help. And the principle really is looking at the importance of overcoming something called separation. So putting this one together, if I may, I just share a very short story, but I started to write and I wanted to be a writer, and I did for a while not very well at all, but I stuck with it because I loved it, and I managed to get one book published, co-written, and now I was working on my first ever book, and it was a book based on a clinic I was running called Stress Busters. And things were going quite well until the hard disk collapsed one day. And the hard disk collapsed when I had 20 days left to deliver the manuscript. The real problem was that I hadn't really done proper backups. So I'd lost quite a lot of material. And I remember, and this is a little ironic now, but I remember just being very stressed about the fact that my book on stress had got lost in the ethers somewhere. And I remember just doing all I knew to do really, which was to pray, and I just asked for help. I said, dear God, you'll never guess what's just happened. And this is what's happened. And I had the response I will remember forever, was a very peaceful feeling. And the words which you were, all is well. And I remember thinking, God clearly doesn't understand the enormity of this situation. But because I had 20 days left, 8 days of workshops, conferences, so I've really only got 12 days left to put 50,000 words together. It's not happening. And Anyway, about an hour after I'd said my prayer, I got a call from the HR director of a company where I was going to be doing a 3-day workshop the next week. And she called up and she said, I'm really sorry, something's happened in the business, critical. We're going to have to cancel next week's workshop. Obviously short notice, we'll pay you in full. So I thought, I'll try and sound disappointed. Quite happy to have those 3 days back. And a couple more days came back as well. Basically, days started arriving, very unusual. A space had occurred. But I did something after that which was extraordinary. I asked for help in a way that I'd never asked for help before. And that was significant. After 20 days, I finished the book. And I had the most extraordinary sense of creative flow in those 20 days. I literally felt like life had helped me write the book in a way that I was completely unexpected. But signs on billboards made sense. Lyrics in songs made sense. I was given articles, I was given books, I heard something on the radio. It was literally as if I was in the conversation and the whole of life was helping me to write the book. I was astonished. It was like literally being, candid camera movie thing where it's like, is this a trick? Is this, I literally felt the dialogue. So I finished the book and I did 3 things. The first thing that I did was I hit save, which I've been doing all along, but I hit save, and then after that I had this little moment, which will sound a bit weird, but basically what I did was I imagined that like 1,000 angels, like in a Gustave Doré picture, 1,000 angels had gathered and they were clapping wildly because I had finished my book, okay? As if I had scored a goal at Wembley. So they're clapping loudly and really cheering. It's delightful, a proper flying ovation, just clapping away. All of the big angels there, the archangels, everybody, and it's just a moment of pure imagination, obviously. But it was a good moment, and they're just applauding me. And the applause dies down, and then I think, great, I need a treat, I need to celebrate. So I thought to myself, all I need to do is eat some chocolate. So I'm going downstairs to eat some chocolate. And as I'm going downstairs, something comes through the letterbox. It's the afternoon, the mail's already been. And so I go to look at what's there, and it's a promotional package for a chocolate bar called Applause. And so that's the story. God honest truth, that's what happened. And but then here's the big question, I suppose. Fundamentally, are you an independent person? Is what happens to you, is what happened to me, chance or part of the plan? If we're independent people, it was purely a random moment. But if we're not, then it takes us into something else. Separation or oneness. Are you an independent person? Are you a dip or are you a hip? Are you a dysfunctionally independent person or are you a healthily independent person? A healthily independent person, according to Maslow, is somebody who can think for themselves, who isn't conditioned by the world. A dip, a dysfunctionally independent person, is somebody who won't let themselves be helped, who has been conditioned to think that success is what you achieve all by yourself. I've referred to myself over the years as a dysfunctionally independent person. It was in the lineage of my family. If my dad could have been helped, the help would have been there, but he couldn't let himself be helped. It was in the lineage of his family too, to be independent and strong. What I came to understand is that actually dysfunctionally said, independence at some point in your life is a weakness. At some point in your life, the next level of success requires another level of partnership. The next level of success requires another level of inspiration. The next level of success requires for us to join in with the big plan rather than our own little plan. The next level of success requires us to be a really really good receiver. Somebody who can truly allow themselves to receive, spiritually as well as socially. And for me, this has just been like one of the biggest lessons I've learned over and over again, is that fundamentally success is knowing that separation is, as Einstein called it, an optical delusion. We are not separate. And when we know that, when we know that there is a oneness that really exists, then we can call upon the wisdom of all of creation to support us, to guide us, to bless us, to inspire us, rather than being one man trying to do it all on our own. So that takes me to the last principle, which is a spiritual principle, and really takes me, I think, to the heart of this whole subject. And the heart of this whole subject for me really is that success doesn't mean anything, actually, unless your success is your gift to other people. If your success is only about you, I honestly don't think it means anything. And I don't think life, the collective intelligence, is that interested. But the moment your success becomes about everybody else too, when your success becomes a service to the world, then all of a sudden I think there is a chance for something wonderful to happen in terms of the help that's available. The book I've just written is called Lovability, Knowing How to Love and Be Loved, and in this book I just share the story of one day when a journalist asked me to sum up the heart of success in 100 words or less. And quite unusually for me, I took a morning off to look at that question, because I realised I didn't have an answer to it. I actually said to her at the time, I don't have an answer for you, can I get back to you on that? I took a morning off, and basically this is what I came up with. These were my 100 words. Before you dedicate your life to a person, a marriage, a family, to a corporation, a political party, or a peace campaign, to a religion, a revolution, a spiritual path, make one other dedication first. First, dedicate yourself to love. Decide to let love be your intention, your purpose, and your point. And then let love inspire you, support you, and guide you in every other dedication you make thereafter. So I put that down and I thought, that's pretty good. And I have to say, as a conversation, when you put success and love together, it takes you places. It's a great conversation. You have to get clear on what love is, and that's a lifelong journey, obviously. But I do believe that love fundamentally is our real mind. It is the heart of who we are. It is our spiritual DNA. It's not just an emotion, it's not just an idea, and it's not just a feeling. And I do think fundamentally success is recognizing that love is who we really are. So when we're going to be more of who we really are, principle number one, then it's to be a more loving person. And then after that is to bring love into as many conversations as we can, and particularly at work. Particularly at work. You know, Freud said there are only two things, two drives, work and love. And he also said that in final analysis, in order not to fall ill, we must learn to love. And I would say, in the final analysis, in order to grow, we must learn to love. That's what we're going to have to do. And so that's why it does feel really like any conversation about success that doesn't include love is only a bit of a conversation. It's not the full conversation. So in the spirit of closing with a poem, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to close with the poem on the last page of Lovability. And it's called Disappearing into Love. And this really probably is the next iteration after what I said before about the dedication to love. This is disappearing into love. Here's how it goes. It just says, when they ask you what is your religion, tell them that it is love. And if they ask you what are your politics, tell them that it is also love. If they ask you what that means, you can tell them that your philosophy is love. If they want to know anything about you, anything else about you, tell them that your favourite occupation is loving. And don't forget to tell them that your nationality is love and that even your blood group is love. Not everyone will stick around to hear what you say next, but fear not. Family and friends may get busy so as to pretend to forget what you just said. It'd drive them crazy now to know that their blood group is also love, that their nationality is love, and that the real work of their life is love. One day they will give in, and then their philosophy will be love, their politics will be love, and their religion will be love. Love gets us all in the end. We all of us disappear back into love eventually. Thank you very much.